only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest, you mute them. Turning it up, these numbers are loud. Peeping this game from a nimbus is wild. Making it rain. While I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bill, I'm the best rest till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Best bill, I'm the best rest till into the next world. Guess I got next still.
And welcome into the Best Bell Fantasy Football podcast and live stream. My name is Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. And if you're new to the live stream, make sure you're hitting that red subscribe button right there. You see it. You know you want to. Tonight, this morning, we're going to be talking Week 12 and some stardom set of questions. So if you hop in and you have some questions, we have 6 games that we need answers for tomorrow, right? It's the Buffalo Bills at Detroit at the 12:30 p.m. Eastern game. Then the Dallas Cowboys host the New York Giants at 4:30. And then the New England Patriots travel to Minnesota to square off against the Vikings. So we've got 6 teams playing tomorrow, and you've got to make some stardom, sit-em decisions. You've got to make some lineup decisions as we are going to get ready for Week 12. This is the time. We know Thanksgiving is a big time for families and focusing on spending time, eating turkey, creating drama. You know how it is. So as you jump in and you've got questions about Week 12 and who you should start, who you should sit, who has a good matchup, whether there's still trades to happen, right? This is the time to ask it. So I'll be throwing out some players that I want to talk about that I have ranked higher or lower versus the consensus. Some of the players are kind of surprising maybe to you, but I'll start with the Thursday game player because we want to make sure we're putting Gabriel Davis in your starting lineup. There are not many wide receivers you should be starting over Gabriel Davis this week. Gabriel Davis, of course, he's been in Detroit over the last week, and Davis's ECR right now is wide receiver. Well, it was 15. Now it's moved up to 14, and he's been a top 13 wide receiver 4 different times so far this year. He's finally made it back from the injury that hampered him earlier in the season. 3 of his last 4 games, 7 or more targets. That's Gabriel Davis. And he's finished, only as the wide receiver 8 once, in the last 4 games. But now he's healthy. And he's got a really, really plus matchup against Detroit. Amani Oruwariye is the starting cornerback that we would expect to face off against Gabriel Davis, square off against Davis. Jeff Okudah is out for this game, so the secondary for Detroit is going to be challenged to face Stephon Diggs and challenged to face Gabriel Davis. And I think it's Gabriel Davis who's going to be the wide receiver to take most advantage. He's been lulling managers to sleep as of late, but Amani Oruwariye is a really positive matchup. In 6 games where Oruwariye has played 30 or more coverage snaps, 4 of those have resulted in 69 or more receiving yards for the opposing wide receiver, and in those games, 3 touchdowns. So this is a boom possibility. Gabriel Davis may not have the 25% target share or 22% target share that you would want from like a wide receiver too, but his 17.2% target share is respectable, and he leads all wide receivers in yards per reception. He's 4th in yards per target, 7th in fantasy points per target. The Bills have a 32.2 implied point total for this Thanksgiving game. So you want to be firing up Gabriel Davis as a top 10 wide receiver. Ryan's jumping in from YouTube. Hey, Ryan, how you doing? Sup? Happy Thanksgiving. Ryan puts in the YouTube chat, ETN, Walker, Jeff Wilson, Rashad White, I assume, and Pierce. Okay, so let me pull up my rankings here. These are all running backs, and I'm really, really high on Kenneth Walker this week. Kenneth Walker gets the Las Vegas Raiders. Walker right now pegs as my running back 5. His consensus is the running back 7, and he's been a top 3 running back in 2 of the last 4 games. He's coming off of the bye. In the last time we saw Kenneth Walker, he had 8 targets, 6 receptions against Tampa. He did only have 10 carries, but I'm really, really bullish on Kenneth Walker. He's 4th in projected points on Fantasy Pros in half PPR. And this is the 3rd best running back matchup. Las Vegas gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to the running back position. So I want to be starting Kenneth Walker. He's going to definitely be there for me. And then this is where a little bit of controversy comes in. I think it comes down to either Jeff Wilson or Travis Etienne, because Dameon Pierce is running back 19 for me. Rachaad White is running back 24 for me. So those are both back end running back 2s. I prefer Jeff Wilson, and maybe this is a mistake. Maybe this is, but I don't think it is. I prefer Jeff Wilson's upside versus Etienne's floor, if that makes sense. So Jeff Wilson, since he's joined the Miami Dolphins, has been a top 10 running back in both games. Against Chicago, he went 9 for 51. He had 3 targets, 3 receptions, 21 yards, and a touchdown. Against Cleveland, 17 carries, 119 rushing yards, 5 targets, 2 receptions, 24 yards, and a touchdown. He was the running back 6 in that game. So he's been a top 10 running back twice since he's been in Miami, and they're coming off the bye, and then they get Houston, who is the number 1 matchup against running backs. So there's a lot of upside there. The concern I have with Travis Etienne, and my article for Fantasy Data is going to be dropping here in the matter of hours, but I just finished writing it up, and Travis Etienne, he's dominated the touches in Jacksonville, yes, but the Ravens defense only gives up 71 rushing yards per game and the 7th fewest fantasy points per game. This is also a tough run blocking defense. The Jaguars project to have a 50% run block disadvantage against the Ravens. And the Ravens just got Roquan Smith a couple weeks ago. They're returning Tyus Bowser and David Ojabo from injury. The Ravens also drain the clock, so it's not like there's going to be this big catch up or shootout type of scenario. Lamar Jackson is dealing with a hip injury. The Ravens love to drain clock. They are the 2nd slowest pace of play team, and that's going to limit the amount of plays. It's the game script plus the difficult matchup for Etienne is a problem, in my opinion. So I have Etienne at 14. So it's not like you're not starting Etienne in most leagues, right? He's running back 14. The consensus, though, has him at 10. And I prefer Jeff Wilson this week over Travis Etienne, even though they're very close. So I get it. Jeff Wilson, I think, is my running back 11. Running back 11 this week, just ahead of Tony Pollard. Okay. Chris Genova from YouTube, what's up? Happy Turkey Eve. Some places we're only 18 minutes away from Thanksgiving. Isn't that exciting? Like, put in the comments also. You can put in your start sit 'em questions, but also start 'em sit 'em Thanksgiving food. Okay, put that in too. We can talk about that tonight. Absolutely. What's happening? Happy Turkey Day Eve. It's a lot of fun. My wife didn't realize that there are this many football games on Thanksgiving. She only knew that the Lions played because she grew up, just outside Detroit. So she knew the Lions played on Thanksgiving, but she didn't know that there were other games. Nevertheless, Chris Genova, you need a wide receiver 2 and a flex for this weekend between Thielen, Campbell, Slayton, and Christian Watson. So let me pull up the rankings and talk through each of these, because these are very close, okay? Thielen, Thielen is my wide receiver 41 right now. He's consensus wide receiver 40. Thielen has finished as the wide receiver 48 or worse each of the last 2 weeks, and he gets New England, and that's a tough matchup. You're banking on a touchdown, and Thielen has only scored 2 touchdowns on the season. I really like Paris Campbell. I really, really like Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell is consensus wide receiver 39. I have him at wide receiver 31. So I like Paris Campbell better than consensus, and I like him better than Thielen. I just can't get behind Darius Slayton. I have Paris Campbell over Slayton this week. Slayton has played well, admittedly, the last few weeks. He's been a top 24 wide receiver 3 of the last 4 weeks. And the week he wasn't, he was wide receiver 40, went 5 for 66. So, Slayton has been bumping up in the rankings. You have to give him credit, number one. And number two is there's a need. Wan'Dale Robinson just tore his ACL. He had 9 receptions for 13 targets, 100 receiving yards. That's not Slayton's game. Slayton is a downfield wide receiver who likes to make space in the open field. But his consensus wide receiver 33, I do have Campbell over him a couple spots. And then Christian Watson. Yeah, so Christian Watson, where is Watson here? I'm staring right at it. 32. I have Paris Campbell and Christian Watson side by side. So I would play both Campbell and Watson. As we know, Christian Watson has been the wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 5 each of the last 2 weeks. So he's had 4 receptions both games. That's going to be a problem. And then he's had 155 receiving yards throughout those games, 5 touchdowns. So I would start Campbell and Watson, although I could see someone making the argument for Slayton. I'm just not a Slayton truther. Okay. Katie from YouTube, thanks for popping in, Katie. Appreciate you. And for everyone who's new too, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, okay? And I will make sure to answer your Stardom Sit-em questions, and we can talk about any of the other fun things that you want to talk about for Thanksgiving, okay? Katie asks, Sutton, Pickens, Dortch, Rashad, Garrett Wilson, Slayton, which 2 are you taking? Woo-hoo, that's a lot of them, but let's narrow it down. Sutton, Cortland Sutton is where did he fall? A top 24 wide receiver for me this week. So he's a back end wide receiver 2. I don't expect Jerry Jeudy to be back. And this is against Carolina. And Carolina's been pretty tough. And even when Cortland Sutton has been on this year, right, we haven't seen a top 20 wide receiver week from him since week 4 against Vegas. And we know how Vegas gives up fantasy points. So, wide receiver 24, 25 for Sutton. Pickens, this is a really tough matchup against Indy. Has one of the worst projected advantage matchups, like individually. And then this is the 5th worst wide receiver matchup overall. So Indy doesn't give up a lot of fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Pickens is at 34 for me right now. Okay. So I have Sutton over Pickens. Greg Dortch, man, I like Greg Dortch and his volume, but you have to be really concerned because the matchup is terrible this week. Let me find where. So, yeah, Rondell Moore is usually the slot guy, and Rondell Moore instead is probably going to be out this week. That's what Coach Cliff Kingsbury said. And if that's the case, Greg Dortch gets the Bryce Callahan treatment from the LA Chargers. And the Chargers give up a lot of fantasy points everywhere except the slot. Bryce Callahan shuts down everybody. I mean, he shut down Juju Smith-Schuster against the Chiefs and has shut down almost every other slot wide receiver. So I'm not starting Greg Dortch unless I really have to. Rashad White, as I mentioned, is a running back 24 for me. Garrett Wilson. Okay, we're scrolling up. Garrett Wilson is a top 30 wide receiver for me right now. This is a 90th percent advantage versus Chicago, so it's a plus matchup for Garrett Wilson. But the Chicago Bears don't give up a lot of fantasy points to the wide receiver. They tend to give up a lot of fantasy points to the running back. They give a lot of fantasy points to the running back. I'm a big Michael Carter guy this week, but I don't see any harm in starting Garrett Wilson. I have Wilson over Slayton. So if I were going in order, I would go Sutton and Rashad White are my top 2. of this pick. Okay. Chris Genova says, I've also got Aaron Jones. They're playing tough Cowboys D, so it's putting me off playing Watson too and dipping much into Green Bay. That is fair. I have faded. I don't know if you want to call him faded, but I've lowered expectations for Aaron Jones. Jones right now is my running back 17, and he's consensus running back 13. Jones is facing a Philadelphia defense. So Jones doesn't get the Cowboys. He gets Philadelphia on Sunday night, and Jones is negative 29% run block advantage. So it's a tough defense against Philly. And even though, you're saying, oh, Philly gave up a lot of rushing yards, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Philly just signed 2 really strong defensive interior linemen, and that's going to be plugging some gaps, including Ndamukong Suh, who, look, to be a defensive tackle in the NFL, right, you need to be big, you need to be strong, and you need to have a couple of good moves. And Ndamukong Suh, these defensive tackles can last forever. I don't know if you remember, but Warren Sapp played until his mid to late 30s. These elite defensive interior linemen, they last a long time. And Suh just comes in, and he just needs to be a stopgap, not let Aaron Jones or any of the other running backs get through. So I can get being a little worried about the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Do I start Slammy from Twitch? Hey, Slammy, appreciate you. Do I start Fournette or Jeff Wilson? Man, oh man, Fournette is a fade for me this week. There are concerns about his hip injury. He might not even be available for this game. That's why if he's ruled out, Rachaad White jumps up even higher. I would take Rachaad White over Najee Harris. I would take Rachaad White over Jamal Williams if I knew that Leonard Fournette was out. Right now, tentatively, Jamal Williams is ahead just because of the goal line work and because it's a really high over-under. This is the highest over-under. The Buffalo-Detroit game is arguably the highest over-under on the week. So yeah, I would start Jeff Wilson for sure. Okay, over Leonard Fournette. Am I worried about Cordarrelle rest of season? Well, Cordarrelle right now he's got Washington, which is a tough matchup. He's expert consensus running back 28. He's got Washington, which is tough. Pittsburgh, which is tough. He's got his bye, which is tough. Of course, he's not scoring any during his bye. New Orleans, Baltimore, and then finally Arizona. If you somehow survive, maybe you can fire him up during Arizona. But that's pretty much it. All the other defenses are going to be pretty tough. So you should have your concerns about Cordarrelle as nothing more than a low running back 2 who's going to struggle to get more than 12 carries in a game. And in fact, only once this season in 7 games has Cordarrelle Patterson had more than 2 targets in a game. So he's not even being used in the passing game like we had seen last year. Yeah, you should be a little worried about the ceiling for Cordarrelle Patterson moving forward. Cletus from YouTube, thanks for jumping in, Cletus. Who should I start? Ayuk, DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson, or Paris Campbell? So I mentioned Paris Campbell over Garrett Wilson. I think I put that, right? I'm pretty sure I put that. DJ Moore is a full-on fade. Yeah, I have, oh, nope. I technically do have Garrett Wilson at 30, Paris Campbell at 31. So give me Garrett Wilson, then Paris Campbell, and then DJ Moore. But you're starting Brandon Ayuk over all of them, right? Brandon Ayuk, this is a 27% pass block advantage over New Orleans that San Francisco has. And then over the last few games, Brandon Ayuk, before this week 11 game in Arizona, he had gone 4 straight games with at least 6 receptions and 80 receiving yards. He didn't do that in week 11 game, but he did get 2 receiving scores in that game, which bailed him out, finished as a top 10 wide receiver. So yes, Brandon Ayuk is a wide receiver 2 for you and probably the safest of all of those. So I would go Brandon Ayuk of those there, Cletus. Should I start Schultz or Kmet? This is Slammy asking from Twitch. And in my rankings, I have Dalton Schultz at 8. Kmet I have at 14. Dalton Schultz, if we look at what he's done over the last few weeks, he's finished as the tight end 10, 9, and 3 in the games that Dak Prescott has started. And then last week, only 3 of 22 on 5 targets. So tight end 22 or tight end 21. So I would say I would take Dalton Schultz most likely, because Justin Fields is significantly questionable for this game. He is getting practices in, but you have to be concerned about the shoulder injury, and we need more clarity on whether or not he's going to play. So if you need a spot start and you're not confident in Cole Kmet, and because of the Justin Fields starting, yes, you should be starting Schultz. Cole Kmet is a boom bust tight end one. Schultz at least gets you a better floor, right? Cole Kmet this season, only 2 games with 5 or more targets, whereas Dalton Schultz this season, right, he's had 5 targets each of the last 4 games, and he had another 9 target game week 1 against Tampa Bay. So the safer play here is Dalton Schultz, because Cole Kmet could be an absolute 0 for you. So I would go with Schultz. Kathy Marshek from YouTube, thanks for popping in, Kathy. Appreciate you jumping in. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Do you think I should trade for Dalvin Cook? It depends. Everything is about value. Dalvin Cook has not been a super efficient running back, so I would be concerned about the upside. He's got a really bad matchup this week against New England. Dalvin Cook has finished outside of the top 20 of running backs 4 times in 10 games. Running back 20 or worse. And he's being valued at what, like running back 7, 8, 9? Yeah, no, I'm not like going after Dalvin Cook for the upside, right? He gets New England, which is a tough defense this week. Then he gets the Jets, which is a tough defense. Detroit is really generous in week 14, so that's nice to end the regular season. Then week 15, tough against Indy, tough against the New York Giants, and then Green Bay is always, a hit or miss. The Green Bay Packers might be out of it by that time, but the Vikings might have clinched a bye by that time, week 17 at Green Bay. They might just rest Dalvin Cook part of week 17 and week 18. I would not be going out of my way to get Dalvin Cook. So it all is price based. Like if you could get him for a low end or even mid pack wide receiver 2, like if you need a running back and you've got, I don't know, Devonta Smith, right? I don't know if the Dalvin Cook person would want to give him up for that, because I think Dalvin Cook he just holds a lot of name value. But like I wouldn't be going out of my way to go get Dalvin Cook. Like I would not want to give up Chris Godwin. I would not want to give up DK Metcalf or Chris Olave. I would not want to give up T Higgins, right, for Dalvin Cook. So should I trade for him? Depends on the price. Scott Kobe. Hey, good to hear from you, Scott. Yeah, we'll have to reconnect here soon. It was good having you on the podcast a few months ago before we got into the season. Hope all is well with you. Scott asks, do you believe Josh Allen has a 30-point game in him tomorrow against Detroit with Okudah out? Stephon Diggs is my wide receiver 1. Josh Allen is my quarterback 1. Gabriel Davis is a top 10 wide receiver for me. And then Dawson Knox is a top 5 tight end for me this week. If you want to talk about like all of the weapons aligning together. Oh, and Devin Singletary is bumped up in the rankings for me as well. Dawson Knox, 37% pass block advantage against Detroit. That's what the offensive line has over the Detroit Lions D line. Dawson Knox has the highest tight end versus linebacker advantage per PFF for this week's matchup, 43%. That's higher than Kelsey's PFF advantage. And he is the 3rd best tight end matchup. Detroit gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to the tight end position. I feel like I'm even too low on Dawson Knox, and I have him at the tight end 5. Dawson Knox's consensus is the tight end 8. And I'm comparing where I have him versus all the other rankers. And right now, only one ranker has Dawson Knox higher than me. So that's what I would say. is yes. Josh Allen has that within his range of outcomes. Kathy asks a follow-up question. What are your thoughts on CeeDee Lamb if Odell Beckham signs with the Cowboys? So let's talk about Odell first and then talk about how he could fit on the Cowboys. So Odell Beckham is coming off the ACL tear that he suffered in the Super Bowl back in February. Now, if he signs right now, that would be a little over 9 months removed from the Super Bowl. Usually it takes 10 to 12 months for a recovery from the ACL tear. And then you're saying, well, that's assuming that everything is going as planned. It's assuming that there are no setbacks. This is the second ACL tear for Odell Beckham. It's a different knee. We also saw him come back slowly from the previous ACL tear. So we've also seen Michael Gallup come back slowly from his ACL tear. Chris Godwin come back slowly from his ACL tear. Even though he was back to playing full snaps, he wasn't as effective the first few games. So if Odell signs, let's say he signs the first week of December, he might not be active that first week. Now we're talking second week of December. Then he gets eased in the next 2 weeks. We're talking third week, fourth week of December, near the end of December. He would have 1 month left. You are still firing up CeeDee Lamb as a top 10 wide receiver every week, even with Odell Beckham there. We had hoped that Michael Gallup would step into this role, but it's just not the case. So I'm firing up CeeDee Lamb no matter what. He's still a top 10 wide receiver. I mean, even this week, he's the wide receiver 4 for me. Yeah, he's got and his consensus is wide receiver 6. So I'm bullish on CeeDee Lamb this week against the Giants. The Giants, who CeeDee Lamb has a 97% PFF grade advantage over their defensive backs. So yes, I'm bullish on CeeDee Lamb, even if Odell signs moving forward. Katie says, thanks. Appreciate you, Katie. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Slammy from Twitch. Do I start Christian Watson or Josh Palmer in the flex? We did get news today about big Mike Williams. He was a DNP, did not practice. I would not be surprised if Mike Williams misses a couple more games due to the re-aggravation of the knee. And if you're starting wide receivers, right, I have Josh Palmer right now at wide receiver 29. His consensus is wide receiver 28. And Christian Watson I have at 32, even though his consensus is at 30. So both me and the consensus agree that Josh Palmer is just a hair ahead of Christian Watson. Should I wait for Lenny or start Swift or CPAT full PPR? Ooh, that's a tough one. Okay, because I'm probably not starting Leonard Fournette this week, even if he's healthy, because right now, Wednesday's report says that his hip is really bothering him, significantly bothering him. And that's what injury he suffered in the London game against Seattle. So I'm probably not starting Lenny. And then do I start Swift or Cordarrelle Patterson? Oh, man. I technically have Patterson over Swift. This is a tough one, though, because DeAndre Swift has finished as the running back 23, 26, 30, and 20 each of the last 4 weeks, despite the limited snaps, limited play. And if this is going to be a slugfest like we anticipate, right, maybe I do need to move DeAndre Swift over the likes of Cordarrelle Patterson. So I will go with DeAndre Swift over Cordarrelle Patterson this week. Patterson faces a Washington team that gives up the 4th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. He's still splitting carries with Caleb Huntley, who is questionable. If we find out that Caleb Huntley is going to be out for this game, then we're going to be, firing up CPAT, I think. But let me see if there's any updated news about him. Yeah, all I see is that he's questionable right now going into the week. So I would probably start Swift over Cordarrelle Patterson. And he's asking, pick up Akers? Nope. James Cook? No, I'd still start Swift over James Cook. There we go. Appreciate it. Please tell me Pollard season is over. Unfortunately, it's not. It's not. Tony Pollard is a top 12 back for me this week. He's been his expert consensus is top 12. He's projected running back 14 in points. He's been running back 4, 7, and 1 each of the last 3 weeks. He was running back 3 back in week 2. And in his first start as the running back 1 for Dallas back in 2020, he finished as the running back 2 that week. The elite ceiling is just there for Pollard. Like I've come around on Tony Pollard. Believe me, Ryan, I was in your spot about 12 months ago. I was anti-Pollard. I traded Tony Pollard a year ago for a 2023 first round pick. And actually that's turning out pretty well because I'm happy with that trade. The 2023 class is going to be real nice, but I'm kind of missing out on Tony Pollard's season, right? So yes, it's not over. It's not over. It's just begun. I have Lamb and Schultz. I don't mind those. I think Lamb is going to smash. I think Schultz is going to smash. I think we'll be in good shape. No, they will split everyone. I'm a Cowboys fan, by the way. Sorry. Yep. Najee for Evans. I'm assuming Mike Evans here, Jordan _ So if you can get Mike Evans for Najee Harris, I would do that deal. Unless you really need a running back. That's what I would say. All right, cool. For those who are new, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. It's right here, or I'm trying to get it right here. My name is Bradley. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. This is Best Bell Fantasy Football, and we're doing a Week 12 Stardom Sit-em in preparation for the Thanksgiving games, but also for the rest of the Week 12 slate. So if you want to talk through players, matchups, who should I start, where do I have the rankings, and sometimes I'll make ranking changes as we go through it because I'll talk myself into a player or will make convincing arguments. The reality is I finished 68th this past week out of over 200 rankers on the Fantasy Pros Actually Rankings contest. Funny enough, I finished number 1 in kickers, and I was the one to recommend you to start Maher. So listen to me for the kickers, I guess. Nevertheless, Jay from YouTube is asking, I need to flex 1. Jamal Williams, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, or Josh Palmer. So I mentioned Jamal Williams is a back and running back 2 for me. But let's flip to the wide receivers. Curtis Samuel falls to the wide receiver 35 for me. It is a really good wide receiver matchup. It's a plus matchup against Atlanta. I could see Curtis Samuel falling in the end zone. Tyler Boyd, though, a 95% advantage versus Tennessee, and he is the 3rd best wide receiver matchup. So I like Tyler Boyd and his matchup in the slot. This is what I had hoped, Jerry Jeudy would have had a couple weeks ago when Jeudy left with the ankle injury, right? Tyler Boyd now plays out of the slot against Tennessee, and the slot against Tennessee, eats alive against the Titans. So I prefer Boyd over Curtis Samuel, and then Josh Palmer. Yeah, let's move Boyd up. We're doing live rankings here, live ranking shift. Boyd does get over Josh Palmer for me. So let's go Boyd and then Palmer and then Curtis Samuel. And then Jamal Williams, I would probably start after Curtis Samuel. Yeah. Jamal Williams, the floor is just so low against Buffalo. That's my concern. CK Rip, I'd keep Najee. It probably depends on your running back situation. That's what I would say. Running backs are Eckler, Cook, Najee, Monty. Wide receivers are Diggs, McLaurin, and Jeudy. If you can get Mike Evans for Najee Harris, I would be okay with that. You've got Eckler and Cook and Monty. You are A-okay. Do you think Jameson Williams will be a monster by the end of the season? Let's say yes. Let's go for it. Jameson Williams crushed at Alabama his last year. His player profiler comp, and this has stuck with me since the draft, is Will Fuller. Like, Will Fuller, baby. Okay, DJ Chark is just like a Jag. Like, literally, he came from the Jaguars and was just a guy. Jameson Williams is not a jag. He's super fast. He's super powerful. He is like Will Fuller down the field. He stretches and keeps defenses honest. He's a big play waiting to happen. So could he be a monster? Absolutely. And you wonder if Detroit, like, they're on a 3-game winning streak. They're playing with a lot of power. They're playing at home against the Buffalo Bills on a short week. Anything can happen. And if they are on fire, if the Detroit Lions are on fire, like Jameson Williams could be fired up here in a couple weeks, and you could see Amon-Ra St. Brown plus Jameson Williams plus, DeAndre Swift just start to elevate this offense a little bit more. They'll elevate Goff. And like Goff doesn't elevate players. It's the other way around. The players elevate Goff. But could he be a monster by the end of the season? Like that's what we've seen from rookie wide receivers, especially first round talent wide receivers over the last few years. Like we just started seeing sprinklings with Treylon Burks. We saw hints of it with Jahan Dotson already. We've seen Garrett Wilson spike. We've seen Chris Olave spike, right? Christian Watson, who was 34th overall, virtually a first round pick. He's had some real spike weeks. So Jameson Williams, who, was a couple spots, ahead of, I think he was a couple spots behind Garrett Wilson. Jameson Williams, he can smash at the end of the year. You want to be picking him up right now and just stashing him on your bench just in case, okay? Because he's got real nice upside. CK Rip, you need a wide receiver. So I would go and get Mike Evans if you can afford to get him for Najee Harris. Pick 2, Mixon or Pirine, Miles Sanders, or Jamal Williams. Well, this is one of those where I'm definitely starting Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is a running back 13 for me this week against Green Bay, and the Philadelphia Eagles have a 27% PFF graded run block advantage. So you have to think that Miles Sanders is going to get some room on the ground. And then looking at what Miles Sanders has done this season, right? Sanders has played pretty well for most of the season. Yes, he's struggled against Washington, Indianapolis, but those are tough run defenses. But looking at his previous games, running back 8, 16, 14, running back 3, running back 11, he's shown some upside games. So give me Miles Sanders. Jamal Williams, as I've mentioned a few times, could he fall in the end zone and be a mid-pack to high-end running back too? Sure. This is a higher scoring game for Jamal Williams, but I am concerned that, he's going to be a between the tackles, short yardage guy. And that's what he's been this year. 159 attempts, 668 rushing yards, only 4.2 yards per attempt, right? And last week, 17 for 64. The week before, 16 for 59. The week before that, 24 for 81. He's not been making up yards on the ground, and he has 0 targets each of the last 3 weeks. He's not making it through the air either. So Jamal Williams has a very scary floor that if he doesn't fall into the end zone, he becomes the running back 36. He becomes the running back 43. He becomes the running back 37. Even in a shootout game, because the Lions will be trying to play catch up, and you can't play catch up getting 4 yards a carry and draining the clock. Okay. So should I pick Jamal Williams or Samaje Perine? Well, right now I'm hedging, right? Samaje Perine is the running back 31 consensus. He finishes the running back 28. He gets Tennessee, which is one of the toughest running matchups. So if I were to pick between Perine and Jamal Williams, I'd pick Jamal Williams. I would pick Mixon over Williams, but I don't think Mixon's going to be activated. So if I have to pick 2, Miles Sanders and Jamal Williams. Sorry if that's the long. Mixon doesn't go Sanders. Yeah. So CK Rip and I are closely thinking along the same lines. Should I drop Jaylen Warren for Elijah Moore as a stash? My answer would be no. And not unless it's like a start 3 wide receiver league with super deep benches and extra flex plays and things like that. Gooner Boy from YouTube, I would not be doing that. We don't trust the coaching staff of the Jets to get Elijah Moore the snaps and the targets that he needs. Mike White is not a great upgrade over Zach Wilson, right? Zach Wilson's PFF grade this year was like 44. Last year, Mike White's PFF grade was like 51. Joe Flacco's PFF grade, for what it's worth, is like 53. Okay, this is not good or elite level of usage. Elijah Moore is now competing with Corey Davis, who's now healthy. He's competing with Garrett Wilson. He just didn't have the competition last year. Now he's got a respectable tight end, Tyler Conklin. Also, Michael Carter. There's a narrative for Michael Carter to have a good week. It's just, we missed on Elijah. I missed on Elijah Moore. I love Elijah Moore. I wish that I could say, pick up Elijah Moore. I just can't. I can't in good faith, Gooner. I can't in good faith say, pick up Elijah Moore. I want to. I wish I could. Jaylen Warren is the pickup, though. Jaylen Warren is questionable for this game. I don't see him listed here. Where's Warren? Jaylen Warren, yeah, he's questionable for this game. This is a Monday game. Warren, before this week 11 game where he left with a hamstring injury, had 9 or more touches each of the last 2 games. He was running back 30 and running back 26. And with Najee Harris, still nursing that Liz Frank injury, at least Najee Harris has shown some signs of life, 90-plus rushing yards each of the last 2 weeks. But Jaylen Warren can step in and be a running back too if Najee Harris is out. So I would rather just keep Jaylen Warren. Icy says, my friend ghosted me. What do I do? Well, if they wanted to, they would. That's my take. If they wanted to, they would. We got to make my decision before tomorrow morning. Let's see. Got to pick 2. Yeah, I would go with Sanders and Jamal Williams most likely. Okay. Michael Valley, Tony Pollard is him. I agree. Tony Pollard has been crushing this year. Okay. He's shown elite upside, and even he's shown a floor with Ezekiel Elliott there too. But even with Zeke there this past week, running back 1 overall. Oh, yes. Give me all the Tony Pollard. Kathy says, thanks. And I subscribed. I appreciate you, Kathy. Thanks. And be like Kathy. If you're a first time viewer or watcher, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. What I'll be doing is doing live streams like this the rest of the year. I also do live drafts in the off season. I do rankings updates. I'll do some theory for you. We talk some best bell. Where does the name best bell come from? We talk about players as a range of outcomes. What could their bell curves be? And we look at upside. We look at downside. We look at medians. All of that. Best bell. Which players have the best bell curves? And that's where the name comes from. Which players have it? Let's talk upside. Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate you subscribing. We're going to keep answering some questions. Keep it moving. Make sure you're throwing your questions in the comments section. I love answering them, talking through, building this community. I appreciate all of you. We've grown from a humble 50 subscribers or so back in September, beginning of October, to now over 340 subscribers and growing. So I appreciate all of you. This has been a lot of fun. 352 actually as of right now. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, throw in your questions or comments in the comment section. I'll keep answering them all night unless I keel over. Okay. Very good. Jacob from YouTube, Singletary or Gibson? Ooh, this is a tough one. And I get why this is tough for you here, Jacob, because Devin Singletary, for me, where did he go? Devin Singletary for me right now, running back 15. He gets Detroit, right? It's at Detroit, and he's had a top 25 week each of the last 3. He's had a top 15 week 3 of the last 5 weeks. He's gotten 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Finished as a top 12 and top 10 running back in half PPR. In full PPR, he's finished, 12 and 10. Whereas Antonio Gibson, I have at 23 against Atlanta. I really want to move him up, though. In full PPR, Antonio Gibson has been a top 17 running back 4 of the last 5 weeks. It hasn't mattered that Brian Robinson is in there because Antonio Gibson will get 3 targets no matter what. In fact, in the 11 games he's played, only once has Antonio Gibson not gotten at least 3 targets. So Antonio Gibson, I want to be higher than consensus on this week. I think I want to move him up even ahead of Najee Harris. So yeah, I like Antonio Gibson, but I think Devin Singletary is just involved in a shootout game that you can't ignore. So could Antonio Gibson outproduce him? Yeah, I think that's within the range of outcome. I think they're very close, much closer than what the rankings indicate, but I would give the lean to Singletary because of all the scoring that I anticipate to have in tomorrow. Gooner boy, Pacheco, Singletary, or Rachaad White half PPR. If we knew Leonard Fournette was out, I would give Rachaad White over all of them. The problem with Pacheco in this is that he's gotten 16 or more carries and 80 or more rushing yards each of the last 2 weeks, and he's finished no better than running back 21. It's because he's not converted to the touchdowns, and he has 0 targets each of the last 2 weeks. It's just not the role that Pacheco is having in this Kansas City offense. So my concern is Pacheco, even if he falls in the end zone, gets you 12 to 15 fantasy points, that's not going to, get you that upside with having no targets. Rachaad White, if we knew Leonard Fournette was out, I would put Rachaad White over all of them. So Singletary is the number 1, and then Rachaad White, and then Pacheco. That's how I have it. Chiefs or Commanders defense, let me look at my DST rankings. Chiefs or Commanders, I would go with Kansas City Chiefs. They're starting the LA Rams are starting Bryce Perkins this coming week, and Connor Cookus is the backup. I had to look up who Connor Cookus was. Right? So the Chiefs, yes, they are my number 1 defense. The Commanders are my number 12 defense against Atlanta. So that's where I have them. They're Ryan N. If you were to pick 3, who would you play? Swift, Patterson, Pacheco, or Kyren Williams? I think I go Swift. And then I think I have Patterson over Pacheco. And then Kyren Williams needs to be bumped up in your rankings. Right now, he's the consensus running back 44, and I think he needs to be moved ahead of Cam Akers, but it's not to running back 39. If it were Matthew Stafford out there, I would be trusting Kyren Williams, but it's Bryce Perkins, and Perkins just loves to run the ball. He loves to run. We've seen more rushing attempts than pass attempts from Bryce Perkins, or at least it's about the same. And that's not what you want. If a rushing quarterback is rushing, he's going to pull rushes out of the backfield. He's also going to pull pass attempts for the running back out of the backfield. That's what we've seen in the statistical trends. So Kyren Williams is not a target this week. I would lean, pick 3. Who would I play? Swift, Patterson, Pacheco. That's my list. Thomas from YouTube. Appreciate you jumping in too. And those who are new, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, throwing your comments in the chat. Appreciate all of you jumping in at 12:22 a.m. East Coast. Okay. Ryan, which kicker should I go with? The one from Indy? Okay. And that would be Chase McLaughlin. I have him at 13. The Washington kicker, Joey Sly, I have him at 25. Or the Miami kicker. And Miami is Jason Sanders. Sanders I have at 5. So I'd go Sanders, McLaughlin, and Sly. So Miami I would lean. Half PPR, start Mike Evans, Damian Pierce, or Jamal Williams. Half PPR, we're going Mike Evans. That's a pretty easy one. George, you gave me an easy one. Thanks. Cletus asks, T. Higgins or Terry McLaurin rest of season? Well, as of right now, Taylor Heineke is the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders. That is good news for Terry McLaurin. But you know what is also good news? Is T. Higgins is healthy and rearing, ready to roll. Okay, T. Higgins has some real plus matchups coming up. He's got Tennessee, huge plus matchup. Kansas City, Cleveland, Tampa Bay. And then week 16 and 17, that's tough. New England and Buffalo, that's going to be tough. But most of the rest of the season for T. Higgins is going to look really nice. And then Terry McLaurin, I have Terry McLaurin ranked behind T. Higgins this week. McLaurin rest of season, Atlanta, which is a plus matchup. And then against the Giants in week 13 and 15. And then San Francisco, which is a really tough matchup. And then he gets Cleveland, which is a plus matchup in week 17, your championship week. So if I were to give the lean, I would slightly lean T. Higgins. Yeah. What do you think about Mike Williams rest of the season? I am not starting Mike Williams until I've seen it from him and he comes out of a game healthy. That's how I'd attack him because he's already re-aggravated his ankle injury. So that's just really high risk of re-aggravation. You don't think Lenny will play this week? I guess we'll just roll with Swift. Yeah, I would just roll the dice with Swift. Swift, at least his floor is going to be running back 30, and this is an explosion type of game. We already saw Leonard Fournette losing carries and snaps to Rachaad White pretty significantly in the London game. So I would roll with DeAndre Swift. That's what I would say. Chris says, thanks. Appreciate you. And what quarterback should I roll with? Currently have Fields, but he's hurt. This is true. Justin Fields is dealing with a shoulder injury. I'm trying to get Geno off waivers, but if I can't get him, should I stream Trevor Lawrence, Carr, Matt Ryan, or Heineke? Well, let's look at some of my quarterback rankings here. Okay. Geno needs to be your number one priority, of course. Geno is my quarterback 5 for this week. I'm extremely bullish on Geno Smith. There have been 3 top 5 performances from Geno Smith already this season, 3 out of 10 weeks. So it's within his range of outcomes. And the second thing is that this is an extremely smash matchup. The Las Vegas Raiders give up the most fantasy points to the quarterback position. They give up on average 20 fantasy points to the quarterback. They give up about 245 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns to the quarterback. So yes, you should be prioritizing Geno Smith. If you need to up your fib bad to make sure you get Geno, that's what you should do. But if you get stuck with Trevor Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence, it'll be fine. It's quarterback 14 for me this week. Derek Carr is quarterback 15. Heineke is quarterback 21, but I could see Heineke moving up even just a little bit. Maybe I can move him into like quarterback 18, 19 range. Heck, let's even move him ahead of Aaron Rodgers this week. It came out just today that Aaron Rodgers has a broken thumb. Aaron Rodgers, broken thumb. But if you had been paying attention, if you follow me on Twitter at FFStalder, I've been talking for a month now, that Aaron Rodgers has been dealing with a significant hand injury. I had been telling you that if you would have been listening. So make sure you're listening. Make sure you're subscribed to me on Twitter. I will put out those little nuggets that will get you that edge in your fantasy leagues. Okay. We all knew, we should have known anyways, that Aaron Rodgers is dealing with that. So yes, you should start Heineke over Aaron Rodgers. Heineke, the Washington Commanders have a 25% pass block advantage over Atlanta. And this is the 5th best quarterback matchup, meaning that Atlanta gives up the 5th most fantasy points to the quarterback position on the year. Taylor Heineke, yes, he's had some struggles this year, but he's also had a top 8 and top 13 quarterback finish. In fact, his first 3 starts, all 3 of them were top 15 quarterback starts. So he's only struggled against Philly, who it makes sense that he would struggle against Philly. And then Houston doesn't give up almost any fantasy points to the quarterback position because they give up a ton of fantasy points to the running back position. So yes, that's what I would say is your priority number 1 is Geno Smith. And then I would go with Trevor Lawrence because Jacksonville Jaguars have a 28% pass block advantage. Trevor Lawrence is going to get some time in the pocket. Okay. Singletary or Jamal Williams, I will go with Singletary. D-Hop and Sanders for McCaffrey. Who wins? Okay, well, let's talk about rest of season DeAndre Hopkins. Rest of season DeAndre Hopkins could be as a high-end wide receiver too. And not because DeAndre Hopkins did anything wrong or is regressing significantly. It's because Marquise Brown is expected back very soon. And Marquise Brown is going to command a 20 to 22% target share, up to even 25% target share. So DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be peppered with as many targets. Miles Sanders, has a plus matchup the rest of the way. You have to like how the offense has opened up for him, even though he struggled the last couple of games, had a couple tough matchups. Christian McCaffrey, though, McCaffrey has lost carries each of the last 3 weeks since his start in San Francisco. If you look at what he's done, he's been running back 2, 11, and 13 each of the last 3 weeks since he's been a full-ish time player for the San Francisco 49ers. So I think you're missing out on like the elite ceiling for McCaffrey. It depends on what you need. I would probably keep Hopkins and Sanders. I'd probably keep them unless this is a small league. Like if this is a 10-team league and you are good at wide receiver, like you're like Stalder, I'm all set at wide receiver. I have 2 other studs. I've got like Jalen Waddle and T. Higgins and maybe another wide receiver to boot. Maybe you have Tyler Lockett or Chris Godwin as your wide receiver 3, and you can afford to upgrade Sanders using DeAndre Hopkins. Sure, fine. But in a vacuum, I probably wouldn't do that deal unless it's a smaller league. CK Rip Mariota is available. Yeah, I'd still take Mariota as my quarterback 17. It's a plus matchup running the ball, but a negative matchup of passing the ball for Mariota. So that's how I would view it. Warrior Loft, happy Thanksgiving. Yes, it is Thanksgiving. It's 12:30 East Coast. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. So that's what I would say is, make sure if you want stardom situms for Thanksgiving food, I haven't answered any of those yet, but if you want to throw that in the comments, feel free. I'll give my unadulterated opinions on Thanksgiving food for sure. Warrior Loft asks, rest of season, Jimmy Garoppolo, Aaron Rodgers. We got to go Jimmy G, baby. And that's coming from the Packers fan. You can see the Lazard jersey. You can see the Bakhtiari jersey. You can see the Robert Tonyan jersey behind me and the cheese head above my head. That's why I placed it there. So you can see the cheese head right there and all of the Green Bay Packers signed mini helmets behind me. That's right. That's right. Even so, give me Jimmy Garoppolo rest of season. Ibrahim Yusuf from YouTube. Ibrahim, how you doing tonight? Hope everything is well. Happy Thanksgiving. Half PPR, which team wins? Oh, man. Cousins, Chubb, Singletary, Diggs, Justin Jefferson, Taysom, Ayuk, Koo, 49ers, or Geno. So I give the lean to Geno. CMC, Saquon. I would give the lean to CMC, Saquon. AJ Brown, ASB. I'll give the lean to the Diggs, JJ side. Freiermuth, I give the lean to Freiermuth. ETN in the flex versus Ayuk in the flex. I would still flex ETN. Butker and Jets. So it looks like team 2. That's how I would rate it. Team 2 gets the slight edge. Who should I trade away, Hurts or Mahomes for a big wide receiver? I'm in a 1 quarterback league with Deshaun Watson as a backup. Look, I'm asking for the world to get Hurts or Mahomes. Because for the person who's acquiring Hurts or Mahomes, it's probably a massive upgrade. So you got to make them feel it. That's how I view it. It's not just how can I help myself? It's how can I make the other teams feel it, honestly, right? Because you're competing against other teams in your league. If you're making the other team better by giving them a big piece, you also there has to be give and take. And that's how you don't tell that to your league mate out loud, like, I need to make you worse. But that's what needs to be in your brain. You have to go for a big ask for trading away Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes. And they'll be like, well, you don't need them. Yeah, well, you do need them. That's how you flip it on their head, okay? So, yes, you should ask for the moon for Hurts or Mahomes. Thomas says, thanks. Appreciate you, Thomas. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. And then at Warrior Loft, start Carr versus the Seahawks or Jimmy G versus the Saints. I'll say Carr versus the Seahawks. Yeah, so Carr, I don't have that as really a plus or minus matchup. Jimmy G versus the Saints. The San Francisco 49ers have a 27% pass block advantage over the Saints. So I think that you do start Jimmy G over Derek Carr. I have them ranked that way, and there's just more positivity against the Saints. A.J. Brown or Hopkins this week? Well, Kyler Murray is projected to be back, and that's good news for DeAndre Hopkins and the rest of the Arizona Cardinals. But does that get him there? My answer is yes. DeAndre Hopkins is projected to play the majority of his snaps against Asante Samuel of the LA Chargers, and he should eat Asante Samuel alive, okay? DeAndre Hopkins, in the games where he's played with Kyler Murray, has finished as the wide receiver 10, 2, and 20. And he finishes the wide receiver 15 in the games where Colt McCoy started. So 10, 2, and 20, you see that the ceiling is just higher with Hopkins, with Kyler Murray in the lineup. But I like that particular matchup. A.J. Brown gets the Green Bay Packers, and he could draw the Jaire Alexander treatment in Philadelphia. Abraham asked, do I play the Jets defense this week? Well, the Jets right now are my defense special teams number 9. So, I mean, you could do worse. You could do better. They're my DST number 9. And then Kamara, Latavius Murray, or Jamal Williams. We're going Kamara here, even though it's a tough matchup. And I understand Kamara has been up and down the last few weeks. Yeah, Kamara's got a really, really tough matchup. He's consensus running back 15. He's finished outside of the top 18 of running backs each of the last 3 weeks. I faded Kamara last week, and that came to fruition. If you read my fantasy data article on players I was higher or lower versus consensus, I was lower on Alvin Kamara, and that paid off. He finished as a running back 19 against the Rams. And I think that that's about where he's going to finish as well. Kamara, I bumped down to running back 18. The Saints have a negative 65% run block advantage. That means they have a 65% disadvantage per PFF run block wise. And this is the second worst matchup for running backs. The 49ers give the second fewest fantasy points to the running back position. Okay. So that's what I would say is Kamara is a, at best, running back, mid-pack running back too. I just got attacked by a spider here. In the basement, I tend to get I've even gotten dive bomb in the middle of the podcast by spiders coming down from the ceiling. I'm like, oh my God. So one was just crawling on my desk. And I'm like, you will not last the night. So there we go. I killed one earlier when I was working on my fantasy data article. Nevertheless, let's keep moving on. Kamara, I would go full PPR, and then Jamal Williams, and then Latavius Murray falls in at 26 for me. He's also questionable for this game against Carolina, and the Denver Broncos have a negative 27% run block advantage per PFF, so it's a bad matchup. Ryan N. asks, who are my top 10 kickers for the week? Fair, coming from the number 1 kicker ranker from this past week. So let's go. Number 1, Tyler Bass. 2, Justin Tucker. 3, Butker. 4, McPherson. 5 is Sanders from Miami. 6 is Carlson from Vegas. 7 is Badgley of Detroit. 8 is the Chargers kicker Dicker. 9 is Gano of the Giants. And then 10 is Maher from the Dallas Cowboys. So those are my top 10. C. Crip from YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. I know you've asked a few questions already, but if you say so, the last question. Need a full PPR flex. Olave, Devontae Smith, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Palmer, Olave, you're thinking. And I would also go with, Olave is 21 for me. Devonta Smith is 23. Donovan Peoples-Jones, all the way at 39. I feel like I'm a little low on DPJ there, but he's 37 consensus. Maybe I need to bump him up a little bit, but it's hard because you're getting into the virtually the same tier of type of player. Virtually the same type of player. And Josh Palmer I have at 30. So I would go Olave still, even though it's a tough matchup. Ibrahim Yusuf just wants some clarity. Top 10 DSTs for this week. These are my top 10. I give the Chiefs number 1, 49ers number 2, Cowboys are 3, Dolphins are 4, Broncos 5, Colts are 6, Vikings 7, Ravens are 8, the Jets are 9th, and the Philadelphia Eagles are number 10. Kyle Kajowski from YouTube, appreciate you jumping in. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, Kyle. Appreciate you jumping in. Thanks for tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving. Should I start Leonard Fournette or Brandon Ayuk? And as C. Crip has said, Brandon Ayuk. Yeah, I would agree. If Fields plays, do you play Fields or Jimmy Garoppolo? If they clear Fields to play, right now I still have Fields ranked over Jimmy Garoppolo. I have Fields at 11 as like a placeholder. I have him over Garoppolo at 12. Obviously, if they rule Fields out, you're starting Garoppolo. And at least you can wait. You'll get it until the 1 p.m. game, and then Garoppolo plays at 4:25. So I would play Justin Fields over Jimmy Garoppolo. That's my hedge. The rushing you just can't ignore, and he doesn't throw the ball much anyways, so maybe it's a few more dump-offs. But yes, that's what I think, is you're going to play Fields if he's active. Although it feels like if I were to – I feel like it's a coin flip right now. I feel like it's a coin flip. He did get some practice in, but you could see the Chicago Bears resting him and preserving him, trying to save him. They're not playing for a playoff game. Their bye week is coming up week 14. They are playing against Green Bay in week 13, and then they've got tough matchups. And save him for Detroit. Same for your week 17 matchups. That would be really nice. So, yes, I would play Justin Fields. All right. I think that's all the questions. I appreciate all of you jumping in, asking your questions. It's been a lot of fun answering your stardom synonyms for week 12. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Good luck with your week 12 matchups. If you have any more questions, make sure you sit comments in the comments section of this video. It's going to be a lot of fun watching football, getting going. Until next time, good luck in the fantasy football streets, everybody.
I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bill, I'm the best